Hello everyone, this is the Hunter DD33, and today we're out here on the Hunter Call of the Wild. First we were going to try the Hunter Classic, but the thing is, I was actually over on White Hart Island and there's still Halloween stuff going on. So all you could hear in the background was the wind whistling and the wolves howling, and it just seemed a little bit much to try and tell you how I got my biggest whitetail buck. So we're over here on Call of the Wild, and we're actually by High Lake, one of my favorite spots for big whitetail. And we're going to go see if we can't find some big whitetail. Along the way, I'll tell you about my biggest whitetail buck with the bow. Alright guys, well we just took out a doe. She came in pretty quick. Didn't really get time to even see her coming in. But we got our first one, and hopefully we can get our harvest value up to 100%. That way if we see a decent buck, we could have a chance for a gold. Alright, so we got a double long heart shot on her at 15.2 meters, and we're looking at 0% consecutive harvest, so that's a good thing we took her, because we're going to have to get it up. Actually, now we're over by Mount Kraken, and this is actually the spot where I got one of my biggest and coolest looking whitetails in the Hunter Call of the Wild, and that was a 170 scoring gold piebald whitetail buck. So basically what we're doing is we're just working our way along the edge of this river bottom and hoping that we can spot a buck off in the distance, or maybe even towards the river, getting a drink or two. And another doe just called, but that's alright because we need to get our consecutive harvests up, so we'll see if we can't get another doe. If she does come in, we'll take a shot. But we also got to be careful because I know there's some bucks in the area, and if we take a shot at a doe, she could potentially spook a big buck. Oh! We just got a call from a buck. So it's actually a good thing we didn't take a shot at that doe, because we very easily could have spooked this buck. I didn't get a look at it yet, so I'm not sure if it's a decent one or not. But the wind is blowing right at it, so hopefully he doesn't smell us. But he's probably going to. That's our buck. But what is this? I feel like it's either a deer that's stuck. Oh, it's a doe. Either a doe or a small buck. I think it's a doe. Alright, she just went down. So that will actually help get our consecutive harvest up as well. So I'm glad we took her. And the buck that we were calling, he just called not too far away. Oh, this is a buck. I totally did not know it was a buck. But you can see he's not very big of one. So let's pick him up. We got right lung, and that got our consecutive harvest up to 20%. He scored 13. I believe this might be the smallest buck I've ever even seen in the Hunter Call of the Wild. He was a 1 trivial, and he scored 397 overall, but we still got 554 cash and another buck. Alright, so now we're going to sneak over here and see if we can't get close to this buck. He did give a warning call, but I didn't really get an exact location on where he called from. Also, it seems like the wind is blowing basically right at him, so we need to be really careful. He looked decent. The first glance I had at him, he looked like 120 plus at least, but I'm not sure. Is that him? No, that's a doe, but he should be. We got another doe over here taking off. And I think that was a... I don't know if that was a buck or what that was. But I just saw a bear over here. So I'm not sure if that was our decent buck or not. Alright, so we got a doe right here. And definitely put a good hit on her. She went right down. But I saw another one. I'm not sure if that was a doe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was another doe. So let's go over here and pick this one up and see if our harvest value went up to at least 50 or 75%, because that will definitely help. What was that now? That was a bear. Alright, so that's the bear call. That's actually the bear that we saw from before. I'm not sure where that buck went. I did see a deer take off this direction, but I don't know if that was the buck or not. So let's pick this doe up. And now we have our harvest value up to 40%. Our consecutive harvest up to 40%. So we're getting a little bit better now. We just got to keep it up there, because you really don't want to screw up on a big buck. Alright, well, it looks like the bear is right here. And it is a female. She's standing up at 53 meters out. But I'm not sure if she's going to come at us. I'm not too worried about her. The wind's blowing right at her. We're reserved in for 20 here. So I don't really know how close we should actually get. But we should be able to take a pretty decent shot from here. Yeah, that was a good hit. A real good hit. Dropped him right there. Wow. So basically we held for about 30 with the 20-meter pin. And it dropped right in there perfect. But that doe called over here. I didn't hear the buck. So let's go over here and we'll go pick up this bear. But I have a feeling that buck should be right down here in this opening, so we gotta be careful. Gotta be real careful. Alright, so we actually made a spine, left lung, right lung, liver shot at 36 meters, and we got our consecutive harvest up to 60% now. We got 1,228 cash for that shot, so it was a bit risky to take that far of a shot, but we definitely made it happen. And she scores 15, so not a bad female. So hopefully we can get this buck now to come into range. More doe tracks. I haven't seen any buck tracks in quite some time, so I'm not sure. Oh, look at this. Look at this. 87 to 100 kgs. That's going to be a good buck. And he is not far away. Like I said, I had a feeling that buck was around here somewhere. And he shouldn't have been too far away. And according to these tracks, he's not. Alright, so we got tracks all over the place. But I'm not sure which way he went. I would almost assume he should be down here by the river. Then we got tracks coming back up this way. So it looks like he was hanging out here for quite some time and decided to trot off and keep on walking somewhere. But I don't know where. Ooh, run. Alright, so we just found a track where he actually did spook, but the question is, which way did he go? According to this, he looped back that way, but I can't see why he would have done that. But while we're waiting on trying to find this big buck, I'm going to tell you about my biggest buck. And it was a cold fall day. It was actually exactly on November 6th. Because my dad's birthday's on the 7th. And so the bucks were rutting pretty hard. And what happened was, I was sitting there for quite some time out in this wide open kind of CRP field. And a lot of times the bucks like to cut across this field and chase the does. But what actually happened is, a few days before this, I kind of got buck fever and hit a really big, like 140 plus 8-pointer, and took a 30-yard shot, hit him right in the front shoulder, knocked him over. He did a complete cartwheel, and actually never even found him, because at that time I was shooting rocket sidewinder broadheads, expandables, and I didn't have quite strong enough of a bow. Well, I had my Katera still, but I didn't have it on 75-pound draw. I had it on like 66 or 68. Which is, I mean, it's still pretty strong, but it just didn't have the penetration to bust through shoulder weight at 30 yards. So when I pulled the trigger, I mean, that buck just got hit so hard, he actually flipped over. He basically did a backflip when I hit him, so I thought for sure he wasn't going to go too far. Well, we waited till the next morning to track him, and we had blood for about 150 yards. Next thing you know, no more blood, no deer, no nothing. He was gone. So even though I was sick to my stomach, a few days later, I went out again, and I knew there was a good chance of a decent buck cutting across the CRP field that I was hunting at the time. And the CRP field actually looked just like this. Really tall grass, really thick. It actually gets to be about 4 feet tall, so probably about like this tall here, but it looked more like this. And the deer always sleep out there, so during the rut, they like to come across the wide open field and chase does. It's kind of like their playpen. So it's kind of like a hit or miss spot. Either it's really good and you see deer, there's action going on, bucks chasing does, or you just sit there and stare at the grass and don't see anything the whole time. So that was a chance I had to take. And what happened is I was sitting in a box stand. It was actually one of our gun stands that we had set up for a drive. And I was sitting there, nothing was happening. At this time, I think it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And all of a sudden, this buck stood up out of the grass at 150 yards away. And I pulled out my binocs and I looked. And I knew that was a shooter buck. I couldn't quite tell how big he was at the time because he was in thick grass and I could just see horns. I knew he was definitely a shooter, for sure. But the problem is, he was actually trotting in the wrong direction. But I remember seeing on TV where the can would actually call in bucks and Rattle would call them in. So I've never actually called in a buck in real life. It never really happened. I mean, I've definitely hunted plenty of bucks, but I've never actually had one come into a call. Well, at this moment, I really didn't have much choice because this monster, 160-inch, 13-point buck was trotting in the wrong direction. So I was sitting there using the grunt, I was using the can, I was using the rattle, everything I could, just like going crazy trying to call this buck so he would at least get mad enough to kind of want to come over in my direction and check out what was going on. So after using the can for probably like 5 minutes straight, the can and the grunt non-stop. Actually, I took my grunt tube apart and I was just using the tube part and I was trying to do like some snort wheeze calls and I was going like and then I would grunt and do everything I possibly could to get this buck's attention. And next thing I know, I could not believe, but this buck did a complete U-turn and started trotting right in my direction. I was shaking like crazy and every step he took, he got bigger and bigger. And all I had was my Hoyt Katera bow and my release. So I was trying to calm my nerves and hope that he would stop giving me a nice broadside shot. Well, it didn't really work out the greatest because he was about to come right underneath me. And that wouldn't have worked out good because, as you know, in a box stand, you can't shoot straight down below you because it's, well, there's a sheet of plywood there, a 4x8 sheet of plywood basically, and you can't shoot underneath you. So I had no choice but to try and get him to stop at like 30 yards away standing, quartering slightly at me, but not too much. He was basically half broadside and half quartering straight at me. So this time I learned my lesson. I was not going to hit that front shoulder. So what I did was put my 30-yard pin right behind the front shoulder and pulled the trigger. And when my luminoc lit up, I knew that buck was smoked. So I got down and went to go look for blood and my arrow. Well, guess what? I couldn't find either. I wasn't really expecting to find my arrow because when you're looking through 5 feet tall CRP grass, you're probably not going to find your arrow in this stuff because you're shooting pretty fast and it goes right through. It's going to be buried somewhere in the grass. You're never going to find the arrow. But I also couldn't find any blood. So I was a little bit nervous at the time. But I knew he was definitely hit good because I could see my luminoc light up and I knew exactly where I hit. So what happened is I went back, told my dad all about it, and I got a couple of my friends. The next day we went out. We couldn't find any blood, but we went about 200 yards from where I last saw it. And there he was laying right there. So what happened is I was shooting 2-blade rage broadheads at the time, and the way the arrow hit, it hit actually perpendicular with the ribs. So it basically hit right on the edge of the rib, straight up and down vertically. And when the arrow went in to the deer, it came out through the guts, but where I hit was actually, I hit right behind the front shoulder, and it went through one of the ribs, but it actually didn't go through the rib. It slid right past the skin and in between the skin and the rib. So when the arrow penetrated through, the skin actually folded up over and covered up the hole, the entry hole, so there was no blood to be found on the entry hole. And the exit hole was plugged up by the intestines because, well, the arrow came out through the intestine and the guts basically plugged the other hole. So it didn't bleed whatsoever at all. But luckily I watched him run across the field 200 yards and he entered into this little pine field, and that's basically where we started tracking the next morning. So we walked into these pines, maybe like 100, 200 feet, and there he was. You could just see his rack sticking up. But the interesting thing was, there was no blood anywhere around him except for right underneath him, because you could see the only part where the blood could actually come out was through the intestine, because the entry hole was actually plugged up by the skin and the rib. It literally sealed up the hole, so it basically bled completely internally, and it wasn't able to actually bleed, even though he actually did get really good liver shot as well. So he got single lung, liver, and intestine hit, and he didn't bleed one single drop. But ever since that moment, I don't shoot 2-blade rage anymore. I only shoot 3-blade rage, and I would never recommend shooting 2-blade rage to anybody ever again. But then when I saw him laying there down in his rack and I counted 13 points on him, I just couldn't believe it, and that was my biggest buck. He scored 160, 13 points, and I'm pretty sure he was probably a 4.5 or 5.5-year-old buck. This is actually a picture that somebody had of him on their trail camera before I actually ended up getting him with my bow. And this is what he looked like. Alright guys, we got a bear right here. Oh my god! Oh, it went down. I did not see that coming. Let's pick it up. It was a female. We got a double lung shot on her at 5.5 meters away. We were trying to find the buck and ran into this bear. Well, at least we got 1,220 cash and 180 XP. Now we're up to 80% for consecutive harvests, so that's pretty awesome. Now hopefully we can find this buck. Alright guys, so we finally just found our big buck that we were looking for. Actually what happened is he pretty much ran some circles, and if you look on the hunter mate here on the map, basically he started out here and started tracking him this way. We found some old tracks going this way, lost him, came back to the original spot, and I thought he might have crossed over here, and I think he was actually hanging out somewhere along the edge of the river. But anyways, we just finally caught a glimpse of him, and he is a good one. Oh, also, if you don't know what the can is, when I was telling you about calling in that big buck, this call right here is the exact same thing as the can in real life. Oh. Did he just bolt? Oh, that's a big buck. That is a big buck. That should be a gold buck right there, guys. That was a 150 plus buck right there. He didn't have hardly any deductions on him. And I think he actually just smelled us from way over here. So we're going to have to take it really slow on this guy. He is a big one. If you look right here, you can actually see this is where we walked through before trying to find his track. And now it looks like he backtracked right past the same exact spot he was before. So it's going to be really difficult to track him. So we need to be careful not to spook him anymore. The wind's pushing a little bit to the left. Oh, he's right there. Oh my god. Alright, we're going to pop up and take a shot. We got him at 20. Oh, just smashed him! He went right down! Alright guys, I think we just got ourselves a gold buck. I wasn't sure if that was the right one at first, but I think he is. I can't believe that just happened. He got so close that I couldn't really do much, and well, we made an awesome shot, and look at the size of this buck. Wow, this is a 150 plus. We should have ourselves a nice gold buck here, guys. What a giant buck. Alright, so let's take a really cool picture of this buck. What an awesome buck. So when he was that close, I wasn't quite sure what button to push, because I'm so used to playing the Hunter Classic that sometimes I push the wrong button. And without looking down at the keyboard, I wanted to make sure I kept an eye on that buck so he didn't get too close. And luckily I hit the right button and we went prone, and he stopped right there at about 15 meters away and made an awesome double lung shot on this monster buck. Alright guys, well let's pick him up and see what he scores. He was 154 and he was gold. Alright, we got ourselves a gold buck. What a monster. I had a feeling he was a big one. He is so smart. He was sneaking through the brush and he didn't leave any tracks at all. What an absolute monster buck. Made a perfect shot, 13.27 meters, and we got 762 cash, 228 XP, and we got ourselves 100% consecutive harvest. So it worked out perfect for this gold whitetail buck. Alright guys, well, I think that's going to be the end of this video. So let me know what your guys' biggest bucks are and what you shot them with, because I really want to know. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.